I'm glad that I'm here today. It's been quite a while since I've been in to observe you, and I'm really looking forward to this chance. Can you tell me a little bit about what you have planned today?
Well, it's going to be a combination math and art lesson, we hope. It's going to be pop art, where I'm going to give each child a candy bar. We're going to take the wrapper and open that up and then enlarge it either 4 or 8 times on larger graph paper. Then they'll draw what they have, paint it, and we'll fold it back together and stuff it to make a sculpture out of it.
Oh, so basically what they're going to be doing is they're going to be taking a candy wrapper, and with the candy wrapper they're going to, what would be the first step that they would need to do?
They'll eat the candy, I guarantee you.
Okay, so the kids will eat the candy, and then the first step with the candy wrapper will be?
They're going to paste the candy wrapper onto 1/4-inch graph paper.
Oh, okay, so they'll be pasting the candy wrapper onto the graph paper, and then they'll be tracing it?
And then they're going to take a ruler and take the graph paper lines and make them go like they're going right over the paper. Just make the lines from the graph paper go through so that they can see squares on the candy wrapper.
So they'll actually be making the graph paper right on the candy wrapper then? Okay.
And the reason I'm having them use graph paper is so they have those lines for guidelines. Then I'm going to have them label the areas, the sidelines 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and A, B, C, D, E, etc., so that they can call the squares 1A or 6B. Now, we've done a lot of graphing and lettering before, and so I think that part will go easily, I hope. Then I'm going to have them try and get the basic outline of the candy wrapper onto the large graph paper and go from that to start working on the lettering. And what I want them to get out of it is looking at the proportion and the scale, how much space each letter takes.
So what you're looking for is to have them have some understanding of the scale and proportion for the...
They'll be doing their actual drawing onto 1-inch graph paper, large pieces. And so 1/4-inch from the small graph paper will be 1 inch on the large graph paper. And they'll have to adjust the size of the letters to fit that.
So the main outcome you have for the lesson then is that they have some understanding of proportion. What other kinds of goals do you have in your mind?
I'd like them to see this as art in real life. I have another lesson that I plan to do after this that will address advertising and the kinds of colors, logos, that sort of thing, and that much of what advertising is art in our lives.
So it pulls a lot of other activities that you've had earlier in the year together into one. Any other skills or goals that you have as far as the math part of the lesson?
Mostly, well, we've been working on fractions a lot, and so to take that 1/4-inch into the inch, I hope will give a more concrete realization of the fractions, because fractions are so nebulous to kids. And they have so little use for them in their life.
So really your outcomes for the lesson today then are first that they'll have some idea of proportion and spacing, that they begin to have an appreciation for art in real life, that they'll be able to translate or figure out the fractional changes that occur when you take something from smaller graph paper to larger graph paper. Is there anything else that I didn't get down?
No, I think that's basically it. When it gets to the part of it that it's painting, which will be, I figure this is going to take 3 lessons, 3 periods of art to do this. The first one will be just transferring it, and that may not even finish it in period. I think that's going to take the most time. Then they'll paint it, and then the next lesson we'll stuff them and fold them and put them together.
So actually today what I'll be seeing then is you teaching them how to do the activity, and then I'll be seeing them begin to start to do it. And you don't anticipate that they'll even finish that part today then?
I would really doubt it. I'd be real surprised because it takes a lot of small motor coordination to do this. And I'm going to offer the option of doing it 8 times to the kids that are good at that sort of thing and would like to do it. But for some of them who can hardly make a pencil stay in a line, just getting the 1-inch squares is going to be real tough.
So that some,
And I will present that way, that this can be a real difficult lesson.
so some students will be allowed to enlarge it even larger, is that what?
Some can do it 4 and some 8, but I suspect most will go with 4, just because it's easier. Yeah, I'd be surprised if they... I don't know, it's hard to tell. I have some real creative kids that might be willing to take that much of a risk. We'll just have to see how it goes.
What kinds of measures of success will you be looking for in the students as you're working with them?
For today's lesson, it will be first that they can actually transfer the shape onto the large graph paper of just the outline of the whole shape of the candy wrapper. And then being able to transfer squares with the letters on and get enough success that they feel like they can do it. It's going to be nervous-making for some kids, using that pencil. In fact, one of the things I'm doing today is passing out new erasers. I know that'll be part of it.
So you're giving out new erasers just to kind of alleviate some of the frustration
I know
that
they're
some
gonna
will,
have to erase.
they'll need to erase. So what you'll be looking for then is whether they can actually do the steps that you will have demonstrated. Okay, can you tell me a little bit about what you'd like me to look for today while I'm in your room?
I'd like you to look for clarity in my directions. Are they logical? Is the sequence good?
So,
Do the kids seem to understand?
so what you want me to pay attention to is the clarity of your directions. You're interested in the sequencing?
They seem to be in a logical order. Are the children able to figure out what I want them to do? Is the pacing correct?
So when you give your directions, you're going to be paying attention then to whether they're sequenced and in a logical order, whether the children are understanding the directions. Is there anything else that you pay attention to as you monitor the directions you give?
Well, this is a lesson that I've never taught, and that always means that I'm not sure how it's going to go. It's one that I wanted to do because it has a lot of things for both math and art and puts it together. So the risk is going to be that I don't know how fast to move. And I try to watch them to signal me. But of course, with 30 bodies, they're all at different places at different times. So I want the pacing to be hitting the middle and not leaving behind the people who are frustrated. This could be a frustrating lesson for some, especially with those with small motor coordination problems.
So it sounds like what you look for when you make a decision about pacing is that the critical mass of students are with you, and that you're not leaving anybody behind when you're actually presenting the lesson. How would you want me to pay attention to that? Would you want me to monitor student behavior?
Right.
Or?
I'd like you to watch them more than me at that point, in fact, to see if they look like they're following me, to see if they're on task. Are they able to do what I'm asking them to do, or is it, did I make a bad decision even choosing this lesson? Is it too hard? Yeah. I think it's okay. I think they've had enough with lettering and graphing that they'll be able to do it, but this is a new step. It's looking for the proportion, looking for the part of the square to draw in. So I'm not sure how that part will go.
Okay. So what I'm going to be doing then is paying attention to the actual directions you give, but more to how the students respond to those directions as a check for you about whether they were clear and in a logical order. And then I'll also be monitoring student behavior to determine if your pacing seems to be appropriate. Is there anything else that you want me to pay attention to?
I like to watch my body language, especially while I'm responding to people that seem to be frustrated or people that aren't interested. Am I alleviating their frustrations or adding to them?
Okay, so the body language in response to the students that are having trouble,
Right.
it would be your body language. And you had described it as, are you helping them or adding to the frustration? So again, I would be looking at the student's response to your intervention.
For the most part. But at that time, I would also like you to watch me. At this time of the year, I'm sure I've set responses to people based on previous behavior. So,
Okay, so I would be observing your body language also. Okay, I think I have a good idea of what you want me to look for today, and I'll be in around 10:25. That's the time we agreed on.
okay.
Okay, I'm looking forward to that. That'll be fun.
I hope so.
I'll see you
Thanks.
then.
Okay.
Okay.
It's going to be math art.
Uh-oh. I did this one. That's very good.
I don't think you've ever done this before. Okay, this is a lesson that I haven't ever taught before. I haven't ever seen it before. What I saw that gave me the idea that I wanted to do this was a finished product from something similar to this that had been done by some junior high students at Holmes. And have you ever heard of pop art?
Pop art?
Anybody know what it is?
Popcorn? What's pop art?
Well, there's lots of different kinds. Go ahead, Maggie.
Sort of like when the paint's out at you, sort of. I mean, like...
Oh, like popping out?
Yeah.
No, not exactly, though. Sometimes it can in this.
Sort of like New Wave with lots of bright colors and little Gilliam-Bobber squiggles and stuff.
Okay. It is lots of bright colors. The ones with the squiggles and all, I don't think really fit into pop art. Usually pop art has things from real life made into art. There's an artist here in Davis that is very famous for his pop art. Have you heard of Wayne Thiebaud? He teaches at the university. Have you seen his work, Heather?
My little brother sent a picture to him and he wrote back.
Oh, really? Why did he send a picture?
Because my little brother likes to draw and it looks kind of like Wayne Thiebaud's work.
Do you know what kind of things he does?
Food.
One of his most famous paintings is a picture of a lemon meringue pie, just a piece of lemon meringue pie. And he's done a lot of pictures of food and makes them look like you just died to eat this ice cream sundae. Just incredibly realistic and yet not like a photograph. It still looks like a picture. Mahad.
This is like the real things, like he paints like this right here. He would make it look real.
Mm-hmm.
With it or just paint?
Tell me that. Ask me
Well,
that
he
again.
used this or paint it, because the way it sounded, like, did he use the lemon meringue pie?
No, he painted it.
He painted.
He painted it. And he's painted a lot of these things. And he is right from here in Davis. What we're going to do today is the kind of pop art that you see a lot. And this is the first of two projects we're going to do with this. I have for each of you a candy bar. And the candy bar is part of what we're going to be doing. I have several different kinds. I'm just going to pass them out randomly. You can trade with your friends if you don't like what kind you got, either to eat or, let me tell you what the project is about. What we're going to be doing with this is creating a pop art sculpture. You need to follow every step by step in order for it to work. I'll give you the candy bar. You'll make your choice about whether you're going to eat it now or save it. But you're going to open the wrapper very carefully, and the first thing you're going to do with the wrapper is mark where the folds are. Okay. Now I want you to really look at the shape of your candy bar before you start doing anything with it, because it's going to be a three-step process. First day, we're going to convert this from this size to either 4 or 8 times bigger. I'll explain to you how to do that. That's mostly what I'm going to show you today. And you're going to be drawing that carefully with pencil. The next time, we'll either paint them or color them with felt pens or crayons. It's up to you. The paint comes out the best, but I'll tell you all about that next time we do it. Then the next day, we'll be putting them back together. We'll stuff them with newspapers and tag board for a form, and then we'll put them back and try to get them as much like the shape they started out as we can. May even hang them with fishing line from the ceiling. Maggie.
Like, do you have to undo the wrapper and take out the candy bar? Can you just leave it like that?
You have to take it out because that's part of the lesson.
Eating it?
No, the eating is not part. That's up to you. Okay. Now, Hansa,
What does math have to do with this? You said this is math art.
the math part is coming. You'll soon find out. Okay, so I'm going to come around now, and I'm going to give you each candy bar. After I've given it to you, I want you to open it up. First thing I want you to do is take your pencil and your ruler and mark on the wrapper where the folds are. Okay? You don't need to mark on the colored part. The only part you need to worry about is the end, the part that's silver, where those folds are, so that when this is all said and done, you can get it back together. Okay? It's the only thing you're going to do now. Okay? I want you to have them so that the colored part is out when you do your lines. Because that's the part we're going to reproduce. Gently, by the way. I discovered when I did one to start with that the foil part will peel off if you press too hard. You just need enough to make a little line on it.
Yeah.
I knew somebody'd ask that, no? Let's see, there's no crackle at this table. Let me replace it with a crackle.
Do we have to do anything with this outside?
Yes, that's the part you need, is the outside.
No, not the
It's
silver
all in
part.
one piece now. These aren't the slide-out kind. They've changed them.
What?
Okay? That was a surprise to me when I bought these. You know how they've always had a little fold-on wrapper and then the tin foil part?
They're getting cheaper.
Okay, now they are all in one piece. So open it carefully.
They're getting stingy.
Go ahead, eat it if you want to. If anybody has any big urge to have a different one than what they've got, let me know. I don't know, I don't think there are any more special darks, Hansa. Oh yeah, here's one.
This won't mark. This won't mark, Mrs. Barnes. It won't.
Yes, it will.
It will?
I know it will, I did it.
We're doing it.
Uh-huh. What?
On the outside. Mark just where they folded it.
Just where these folds are on the silver part.
Where? Here?
Just on, yes. You're going to need that to be able to fold it back together eventually. Okay? You're only going to mark on the silver part. Eventually.
Mrs. Bonner, just peeled.
Carefully. You won't remember by the time we finish, trust me.
You marked it before or after?
Just the fold lines on the silver part. Too late. Just with your pencil, just mark along the lines, just enough so that you can see it later.
Every line, Mrs. Bonner?
Just on the silver part.
Not on the dark part?
Okay, I want to move along. Next thing you need to do, Jamie, I need you to listen. Don't do this until I finish telling you exactly how to do it. Okay? The next thing you're going to be doing is gluing your wrapper onto your piece of graph paper. Now your life will be a lot simpler with this if you are careful when you do the gluing. It does not take much gluing. Mo, will you wait till I finish, please? It does not take much glue to do it. All you need to do is have it bond onto the paper. But where you put it is important. I want you to put it so that the corner, the upper left-hand corner of your candy wrapper is at the upper left-hand corner of one of the squares on the graph paper. So it just fits right along. So there's a line along the top of your candy wrapper, line of graph paper on the top, and a line of graph paper on the left. And so if I had, like this diagram I have here, I would paste the candy wrapper on so that it would be right there, and right there. It's bigger than the number of things that I wrote on here. Okay? Chris?
Should it be on the side with the holes or out the side?
Doesn't matter. Okay. So the next thing to do is glue that on. Don't put too much glue on. Don't get it all over the place. Just make sure the top line of your candy wrapper is by the top line. You're going to glue it right there? Yeah, that's fine. Doesn't take very much glue. Very nice. Got it. Don't do it. Anything yet till I'm sure everybody's with me. You're just worried about the line on the left and the line on the top. Okay? You're just fine. This is perfect. Now, even if you haven't finished gluing, look up just for a second for the next step. Okay? on your graph paper, right where you have your candy wrapper, I want you to label on the top A, B, C, D, E, F, G. It goes up to L, I think. And then on the side, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Making sure that each of your numbers and letters is right opposite a square. Okay? Okay, so that I could say to you later, look at square 2C, and you would look right there. Okay, just like we've done for graphs, like when we did the whale graph, that kind of thing. Okay, you're going to have a letter over each square and a number to the left.
My L goofed up
Why does it matter?
because it sticks out.
Hang on, I'll be there. Oh, no, it should. That's fine.
Is this right?
This is the only part I'm worried about, is right there. Okay, now put an A right below this A. Okay. Right, you got it.
Right. Miss Bonner, do you have to do all 4 sides? Is 2 enough, or do you have to do all 4?
All 4. You'll need it. Okay? In the square, on the square, good. You got it. Great. Looking good. Looking good. Okay, you need to do, this is fine, but you need to do also the bottom and the other side. Okay? Just have the letters exactly opposite the ones that are on the top, A, C, D, and 1, 2, 3, 4. What? Okay, next. I need you to listen even if you haven't finished numbering. Pencils down, eyes up. The next part of this you have to do very, very carefully. We're going to take your paper with your label all, your candy wrapper all labeled. Then you're going to take your ruler, line it up with the lines that are on your graph paper. You're going to draw a line down from every line and a line across from every line. Essentially, what you're going to be doing is making the lines like you have underneath. Okay, so the lines that are on the top and bottom are going to guide you to make each of the lines there. You're going to be making little boxes on top of your candy wrapper. That's the next thing to do when you get started doing that. I'll bring this example around so you can take a look in case you're confused. You want it to go in both directions so you end up with a grid on there. Sarah, what can I do for you?
Is it okay if I skip the A over there so do I put my 1 over here?
Exactly opposite this one, okay? Yeah, that's right. You're fine. Perfect. Make it nice and straight, Eric. Get it right lined up there. Okay. Got it, Meg? You don't have to measure anything. All you need to do is make each of the lines right where they are. Okay? So you're going to start with the first line. Well, that's why I said you have to be real gentle with those. Okay? I'll be there in a sec. Okay, you're all right. Okay. Yep, you got it. Who's ready? The next thing.
Oh, no.
I'm going to be bringing to you a giant piece of graph paper. It's about twice as big as you need if you're going to enlarge your wrapper 4 times. If you want to be really brave and enlarge it 8 times, then you'll need the whole piece. Otherwise, when you get it, just fold it in half so it will more or less fit on your desk. No, I'm sorry. You ready? I want to see your exciting talent now. Okay. That's wonderful. You ready? Ready? Okay. Hey, now let me have your attention. Before you make your decision about whether you're going to do yours 4 times or 8 times, I need to explain just a couple things to you. The graph paper that you have your label pasted on has 1/4 inch squares. To enlarge it 4 times, you'll have 1 square on the big paper. To enlarge it 8 times, It's going to take you 4 squares on the big paper because it will be 2 inches this way by 2 inches that way. So for each square on the little paper, you would need to have 4 squares on the big paper. The difficulty with that is you have to figure out when you're starting to transfer where each part goes. If you want to do that, I'll explain that after I get other people started. I'm going to assume that most of you are going to want to do it on the 1-inch squares. Okay? First thing you're going to need to do is to make a grid on your 1-inch squares that's exactly like what you have on your graph paper. Okay, so you're going to choose a part on it. You're going to make a line. You're going to say A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L that way, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and so on that way. Okay? Just make it so it looks exactly like that, except it's going to be 4 times as large. Maggie?
I don't understand what you're saying. But like before, shut up. Like before when you have the little candy wrapper and you want to do it like 4 times, you said something like you take 2 squares?
No,
or
1.
1 square?
4 times. You're just going to make, let me show you. I started in the corner. I went A, B, C, D across there, and I marked out the size that the whole candy bar would be. Okay. Chris?
I don't see, do you do 4 squares?
For each number, for example, you'd have to have 2 inches length because 8 times 1/4 is 2. Right? So you'd have to have 2 inches for the 1, and then 2 inches for the 2, 2 inches for the 3. Now, there's a slight problem in that the paper is just a little tad skimpy for the size of the candy wrapper. The only thing you can do to make it work then is to just cut off your first strip on the candy wrapper. Just pretend it's not there. And then it will fit on just fine. And we'll still be able to put it together. Brooke?
On this, is it okay if we outline it? I mean,
Yes, I encourage you to do that. Carrie? You have to pretend that part of your candy wrapper isn't here to do it. The top probably, well, this way fits no problem at all. This way is the way that's a little bit skimpy. It goes across just fine, but it's not 22 full squares long. No, that's not a problem. The width is no problem at all. It's only the height that's a problem. Sometimes I recommend for you that you do it in 1-inch squares. It will be much less confusing for you. Chris, you've got to have those. Oh, I see what you did. You're fine.
Should I do the 1-inch?
Yes.
And I'm confused right now.
Okay, would you put your rulers and pencils down and give me your attention for this part? Now comes the hard part. Okay. This is the part that's really going to strain your brain. You're going to be transferring what is on your candy wrapper onto this giant paper. Now, the way that you do that is to look at each of the little squares and see what is in the little square, and then you're going to look at the proportion of it on the big square. For example, when I looked at my little candy wrapper to start it, the first thing I did was outline where the end of the orange part was, because that was easy. So I looked at the right-hand line and I said, that right-hand line is about 1/3 of the way in the I square to the right-hand side. Feels it's orange 2/3 of the way, but about 1/3 of the way it isn't. So then I took my ruler on my giant piece and I made a line there going from, let's see, that was just at the start of the 2 line, all the way down to the bottom. Okay. Then I went across. Okay, this was right at the 2 line, worked out very tidily. But it went from 1/3 of the way into the D square over to the I square. See how that went? That part's not too hard. The hard part is when you get into the lettering. Now, I recommend for the lettering that you start with whatever letters look easy to you. On the one that I did, I started with this little square here that I would call 6G that had IAL. The reason I started with that one, Jimmy, the reason I started with that one is because the I was right on the line and part of the L was right on the line. Look at your wrapper and see where do you think is an easy part, and start there. Now I gave you these brand new erasers for a reason. You may find out that some of those need to be rearranged as you're putting them on. Hang on a minute, I'll be there. Okay? So choose some square. You don't have to do this in any order. That's one of the things that's going to be fun about it. You don't have to say, okay, I started at 1A and now I'm doing 1B and 1C and so on. You can just choose whatever squares you want to work on. Okay? You might want to use your ruler to do the edges of letters. You probably don't need to. Probably you can do them by hand. Okay, questions? Ma'am?
Wouldn't it be easier if we folded it up first and then put the lettering in?
Could if you wanted to. I can't see any reason why not.
Okay.
Hansa?
My thing won't fit. I tried it 8. And it won't fit. 8 times and it won't fit. Just won't. See? Like the J is as far as I could go.
Oh, that's because you turned the paper that way.
Yeah, but
it
it
only
wouldn't
fits the other way. It doesn't quite fit. That's what I was explaining. It's one square short. It's not 22 squares wide.
So
That's one of the. I recommend to you that you do the 1 inch because otherwise, yeah, it has to be easy for you to visualize it to do the 2 inch. And I think you're having a hard time with visualizing it. Okay? With how you need to adjust this in order to fit it onto the 2 inches. But the paper is not big enough. So then you have to make the adjustments because there isn't any bigger paper. So you say, okay, I'm not going to do this line at all because it won't all fit. Because you need 22 spaces for it all to fit.
Okay.
Sarah?
Now I've got my thing out here. Now I want to know if what we do. How high do you want the letter in?
Okay. You're going to look at, say, let's take this square right here. Square D5. Okay? And in D5, the H is a little bit higher than the D5, isn't it? But where does it start on D5? Okay? So that's where you'll start. So you'll look at D5, and you're going to start that letter right there, because that's right on the line. Okay? Then you'll look at this part of it. You've got it. Absolutely. Okay, let me have your attention, please. I think, Rick, I think you all have the idea. However, it's just about time for us to go to lunch. So we're going to have to stop. First thing I need you to do now is put your name on both pieces of graph paper. Don't do anything else until you've done that. Somewhere that's not in the middle of where your design is going to be. Okay? Stick your name on it so I can see it. Okay, next. Will you please pass the small graph paper to position 2, the large graph paper to position 1. As soon as you have put the paper there, will you go sit down? Like I told you at the beginning, we've only begun step 1 of this lesson. Okay? You've got your grid all set up now. You're ready to go on the drawing part. So that'll be the next step we do. After you finish the drawing part, Mark, would you sit down and pay attention, please? After you finish the drawing part and you have it so that you're satisfied with it, that's when you'll paint it or do it in felt pens. And then after that is when we'll put it together. Okay, that'll be 3 separate times. I think we'll do the drawing on, or continue the drawing on Thursday. Tomorrow's the art fair. Okay, any questions? Okay, good. Will you put your rulers and your glue away, please?
That was fun, watching you in action today. It was.
It was a lot more fun for me than I thought it would be. I thought I was going to be real aware of what I was doing, what the kids were doing, and actually it was just like teaching a regular lesson. And the kids acted like they always do.
And so you didn't feel that having me there really got in the way?
I guess I'm getting used to you.
That's good. How did you feel about the lesson in general?
Well, if I had to do over, I would leave out the part about multiplying and having it be 8 times bigger. That just seemed like one extra thing for kids to think about. And when I planned it, I thought that the ones that are really into art and into math would choose that. But there were all kinds of people making what I thought bad decisions about doing that.
So if you were going to do it again, you would definitely probably not want to offer that as an option. Is that what you're thinking, or?
Just, that's my instant reaction. I don't know when I think it through later whether maybe I was trying to do too much in one day, and I still haven't quite come to terms with that.
When you planned the lesson in your head, how did you anticipate, did you just anticipate maybe a couple of kids wanting to do it that way?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And there were about 10, I guess, that?
Probably somewhere between 6 and 10. And I never dreamed that they would go with that. That they got into the size of it. They thought that would be exciting. And if I had thought that through, I would have probably taught it in 2 steps or at 2 different times. Because I have a feeling that they're going to get into frustrations as they try to transfer and enlarge and find the proportion of the size of the letters. I have a feeling it's going to be real tough for some of those that made that choice.
I remember there was one boy in particular, the one with the yellow T-shirt on, and he, I could tell from the way you were interacting with him that he was one who you felt had made a bad decision. Can you think back to that instance when you were talking to him?
Well, that was one of the things that I remembered from the lesson that I wanted to talk to you about afterwards, is what was your opinion of how I handled that? Hands up.
My thing won't fit. I tried today, and it won't fit. 8 times, and it won't fit.
I thought I tried to be real clear with him at the beginning that I thought that was a bad choice, but then when I went back to him, I was really firm with him. It doesn't quite fit. That's what I was explaining, because it's 1 square short. I wondered if I was really pushing him too much. Was I helping him or frustrating him? I recommend that you do the 1 inch, because otherwise, yeah, it has to be easy for you to visualize it to do the 2 inch. And I think you're having a hard time with visualizing it.
And that was at the point when you were telling him for the second time that he should perhaps do it a different way. What did you think? Did you feel like you were frustrating him, or?
Perhaps. And I think I based what I said on the many other times that we've had the same kind of situation. And he doesn't bail himself out of those, and he becomes very argumentative, and he can just go on and on and on. And I felt like he would never finish this project if I didn't say, I strongly recommend that you go here.
I was just thinking back, there were some specific words that you used with him that I think maybe helped him focus a little bit. Do you remember any of the words that you used?
Not at all.
The one that I underlined was visualize. You made a comment to him that he needed to visualize the whole product, and that because he was having trouble visualizing, that's why you recommended that he not do it. And it's at that point that I saw his behavior go, oh, okay, maybe I don't know how to do this. I at first was paying attention to your body language because that's one of the things you had asked me to look for, but I didn't see anything that I would construe as being negative. How did you feel about that?
I try really hard not to show anything negative toward him, because he can become, it's a wall then, and he just makes such a, it becomes a matter of principle to him. So I've worked on trying not to show negative toward him, but I'm never sure. When you're only there with yourself, you don't see yourself. So that was one of the reasons I wanted you to look for that.
Was there any other times that you were aware with the body language that that you were conscious of your own body language with certain students?
I'm conscious of it when I am monitoring behavior by raising my eyebrows or giving somebody a look. So I was conscious of doing that a couple of times, which is a real normal behavior for me.
And it seems to be effective with the students too. They seem to know that
when they get that look,
Mrs. Bonner means business. So, were there any other times when you were aware of your body language?
Not particularly. Mm-mm. No, I think that's one of the things I'm not that aware of, and that's one of the reasons I asked you to look for it.
What I noticed was that you seemed to be relaxed and interact with, I felt you interacted with the kids on a pretty equal basis. Another thing that you had asked me to look at was your directions. When you think back to the directions that you gave to the students, did they seem appropriate? And do you recall that the students were able to follow the directions?
I thought the directions were logical, that the kids were able to follow what I was doing for the most part, and their frustration at doing it on the colored side of the candy wrapper instead of the white side was something I hadn't anticipated at all. Never dawned on me. I thought I was really being clever thinking about marking those folds. But the rest of the directions I thought were fine.
And so when you think back to the direction giving that you gave, you would probably make a modification for the direction you'd give around how to draw the lines on the candy wrapper. I had kind of checked, because you asked me to look at the students' response to your directions, and so each time you gave a direction, I was checking to see what the students, if they were following the direction, and I noticed that the same thing you did, which was for the candy wrapper, they didn't, some of them wanted to put the directions on the back. I also checked after you had them label the boxes, they had to go through and label the letters and the numbers, and that the kids seemed to understand that.
They didn't have much problem with that at all. There was only one that had put the labels on the lines.
And then when the next one was when they had to draw the lines actually on the
candy wrapper.
And again, the students seemed to understand what was expected there. And of course, you were going around doing quite a bit of monitoring in between each direction. And then the last one was where they had to transpose the the design onto the paper.
From what I could see, that was going better than I had anticipated. It looked like once they got to that point, they knew just what they were going to do next. I know that I can pick out which kids are going to have a hard time when it actually push comes to shove, and they're putting that pencil there and trying to get those letters in straight. I think they've got enough direction and they know where they are enough that it'll work.
Yeah, it was hard for me to actually see what the kids were doing at that time because the pencil lines were light, but they seemed to be engaged and they seemed intrigued by it, and you could see a lot of them doing some mental things in their head about
trying to rush, trying to go ahead of where I was. They knew what was coming next.
And so that it was kind of fun because they did seem to look forward to doing it and intrigued by the task. You also had wanted to have me look at your pacing. How did you feel about the pacing of the lesson? When you transition between giving one direction and then going on to the next one, what kinds of things were going on in your head at the time when you were making the decision about whether to move on or to stay for a few more minutes and have a few more kids finish?
Well, what always does, you're always looking to see, or I'm always looking to see if most kids are ready to go on, and if the others seem like they're somewhat with me. And if most are, you have to go on, because otherwise you'll lose them and it'll start just being chaos instead of a productive lesson. So generally that's how I do it, is look to see if most of them are ready to go on and figure out what I'm going to do with those that need to catch up.
And for the most part, at each transition, it seemed like there was a critical mass of students who were ready to move on. There always were a few that weren't quite up with you. What were you thinking about those students at that time?
Well, in this lesson, none of them were ever more than one step behind. And even with the one step, they weren't that far behind that. So I wasn't too concerned because there were enough people sitting around everybody that I knew they could catch up. I knew they had enough support around them to be able to catch up. Sometimes lessons go where some just get lost. One or two will get lost and the rest are ready to move on. And then I still move on because you can't lose 90% for 5%.
So what's important for you then as you watch the kids is to kind of see how many steps behind they are in this kind of a lesson, and then also that sometimes you do to make a decision just to go on and pick up those kids later in the lesson. So when you think back to the pacing then for your lesson, it seemed and felt appropriate.
Basically. It's never perfect, but it wasn't bad.
Again,
I was comfortable.
you had asked me to look at student behavior in relation to the pacing, and it pretty much corroborates with what we noticed in the direction giving, that the kids were on task. They did seem to know what they were supposed to be doing and were able to move along with you. So I think you met your expectations, which were that the students would be able to keep up with the pacing. How about expectations that you had for the students as far as their behavior?
No, I thought they behaved very, very well and were far less distracted by having you in the room than they've been in previous times.
You seem to not have any trouble refocusing them when you needed to. They, quieted down with your signals, so it seemed that the expectations were clear.
Generally, I think that's one of my strengths, is classroom management. But I never have anybody else to look at it and see what do they think. So that was my reason for asking that.
When you think back to this process, how did it feel to you? Is there anything that helped or got in the way of our working together?
You didn't get in my way at all. I love this process because I like being able to ask you to look for things. I'm in that room by myself all the time with nobody noticing things that I do and always wondering what's going on in other rooms, or is there a better way to do this? So I loved having the opportunity to say, Diane, will you look at this? Will you look at that?
So you like to be able to kind of direct what I'm going to focus on a little bit.
Very definitely. I don't think I'd like it as much if you came in and told me what you were going to look at, or if you came in and told me what you wanted me to teach. I like having the chance to do different kinds of things when you're there and seeing what I'm most effective at and what ways I can change it.
Is there anything that I did that maybe got in the way of the smooth lesson or in the pre or post conferencing?
Not at all. At first, when the children would focus on you instead of the lesson, that was distracting, but now that they're used to the sight of you, that I love the process. To me, it's a treat. I look forward to it.
Okay. Well, I enjoyed being in there today, and I always, cherish a chance to share a little bit about teaching. And so I'll be giving you some written feedback, just kind of reviewing our post-conference in a couple of days when I get it written up, kind of to refresh your memory about what we've talked about.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure for me.
Okay.